The classical argument, components and structure. Let's take a look today at this classical argument and the different parts of it and how it's put together and how we can use that as we structure our own essays. The classical argument is probably best known because it was written about by Aristotle, who lived over 2,000 years ago and wrote many things about the techniques of persuasion when speaking or later on when writing. How do you do it in such a way that it's persuasive to your audience? And so Aristotle, as part of this, came up with what's called the classical argument. And it was a set of stages with 5 key elements that would be used in any argument, whether verbal or written, that would make it extra persuasive to the audience. The first element in the classical argument is the introduction. The second is called the narration. The third, the confirmation. The fourth, the refutation. And the fifth, the conclusion. These are translated from the original Greek words that Aristotle used. When we talk about the introduction, this is the part where the speaker grabs the attention of the audience and says what the thesis will be, what the main argument is going to be. The narration is where the speaker gives background information that will help the listener to understand why this argument or this thesis is important and to put it into context. The confirmation section is where the speaker argues with evidence, presenting evidence and logic that shows their claim is true. The refutation section is where the speaker examines other opposing claims that people might make against their argument and then shows why they're not valid. And finally, the conclusion is where the speaker summarizes and reiterates what their overall argument is, or what we would call the thesis. So let's take a look at each of those and see how it specifically relates to the structure of an essay that you're going to write. We take the introduction and narration sections of the classical argument and we combine them into one introduction paragraph. We take the confirmation section and we write 3 body paragraphs that fulfill its purpose. The refutation is a counter-argument paragraph, and we do that for our second and third essays in Rhet 1010. And finally, the conclusion is our conclusion paragraph. Remember, the introduction paragraph is where you, the writer, give essential background information and context for the argument, as well as state your thesis. Your 3 body paragraphs are where you put your first and second and third main premise that your argument is built upon. And for each one of those, you give argumentation and evidence. Your counter-argument paragraph is where you discuss and refute arguments against your thesis. And finally, you wrap it up in the conclusion paragraph, summarizing and reiterating your thesis. That's how we use the classical argument structure in our essays that we write in Rhet 1010.